There is a quiet moment that arrives for many people sometime after the age of 30. It does not come with chaos or visible collapse. Life on the surface appears stable, even successful by social standards. Responsibilities are being handled, routines are in place, and outwardly everything seems to be moving forward. Yet internally, something begins to feel misaligned. A subtle restlessness settles in, not strong enough to be called sadness, but persistent enough to be noticed. This is often the first sign of feeling lost, not in a dramatic way, but in a deeply personal and confusing one. What makes this experience so unsettling is that it often appears when nothing is technically wrong. Many people reach their 30s having followed the expected path. They studied, worked hard, adapted to pressure, and learned to survive in a demanding world. From the outside, their lives look functional and respectable. But inside, a quiet question begins to surface, one that was previously drowned out by ambition and urgency. The question is simple, yet heavy with meaning. Is this truly the life I am meant to live? Modern psychology explains that this phase is not a failure, but a transition. In early adulthood, the brain is heavily motivated by external validation. Success, approval, achievement, and belonging strongly activate dopamine, the neurotransmitter associated with reward and motivation. Goals feel exciting because they are clearly defined by society, and pursuing them provides a sense of direction. During this stage, the mind is focused on building identity, proving worth, and securing a place in the world. Around the age of 30, the brain begins to shift. Neuroscience shows that dopamine responses slowly change, especially toward goals that no longer align with deeper values. Achievements that once felt thrilling now feel neutral or even empty. The same job, the same routines, and the same markers of success stop producing the emotional satisfaction they once did. This change can feel confusing and frightening, but it is not a sign of decline. It is a sign of maturation. Buddha described this moment thousands of years ago as the beginning of awareness. He taught that suffering does not always arise from pain, but often from subtle dissatisfaction. When the mind starts to see through temporary pleasures and external rewards, it begins to question their ability to provide lasting fulfillment. This questioning is not a problem to be fixed. It is an invitation to look deeper. Many people mistake this internal shift as something going wrong with them. They label it as burnout, boredom, or even a personal failure. In reality, it is the mind asking for alignment rather than achievement. It is the nervous system signaling that survival alone is no longer enough. The soul, in psychological terms, is seeking meaning rather than stimulation. Health science supports this understanding. Chronic misalignment between inner values and daily actions creates long-term stress in the body. Cortisol levels remain elevated, sleep becomes lighter, and emotional resilience weakens. Even when life appears stable, the body senses when something essential is missing. This is why feeling lost after 30 is often accompanied by fatigue, irritability, or a quiet emotional numbness. Buddha taught that when craving and identity are built on external conditions, peace remains fragile. As long as happiness depends on outcomes, roles, or approval, it cannot last. After 30, many people begin to sense this truth not intellectually but emotionally. The mind grows tired of chasing. The heart grows tired of pretending. This is the moment when the old map stops working. The goals that once guided you no longer provide clarity, and yet a new direction has not fully revealed itself. You are standing between who you were trained to become and who you are slowly awakening to be. This in-between space feels like being lost, but in reality, it is the beginning of a more conscious journey. Feeling lost after 30 is not a sign that life has failed you. It is a sign that life is asking something deeper from you. It is asking you to stop running on borrowed definitions of success and start listening to your own inner wisdom. This discomfort is not meant to break you. It is meant to wake you. And this is only the beginning. By the time you reach your 30s, something subtle yet profound begins to happen inside your sense of self. The identity you spent years carefully constructing starts to feel less solid. This can be deeply unsettling because identity once gave you certainty. It told you who you were, where you were going, and how to measure your progress. When that identity begins to loosen, the mind interprets it as being lost, even though what is actually happening is growth. In early adulthood, identity is often built through roles. You are your profession, your relationship status, your productivity, and your social image. These roles create structure and direction, and the brain finds comfort in them because they reduce uncertainty. Psychology calls this the ego structure, the mental framework that organizes experience and protects the sense of self. For a time, this structure is necessary. It helps you navigate the world and establish independence. But the ego is not designed to provide lifelong meaning. It is designed to help you survive and function. As years pass, the mind begins to notice the limitations of role-based identity. You may succeed in your career and still feel empty. You may be in a stable relationship and still feel unseen. The mind starts to realize that being efficient and accepted does not automatically mean being fulfilled. Buddha taught that attachment to identity is one of the deepest sources of suffering. He observed that when we cling to who we think we are, we resist the natural flow of change. After 30, life gently begins to challenge those attachments. The roles you play no longer fully contain your experience. You feel larger than the labels you carry, yet unsure of what exists beyond them. Modern neuroscience shows that the brain continues to rewire itself well into midlife. Neural pathways associated with novelty-seeking slowly weaken, while those connected to reflection, emotional processing, and long-term meaning become more active. This shift often creates a sense of disorientation. The mind that once thrived on speed and achievement now craves depth and coherence. When life does not immediately provide that depth, the result feels like emptiness. This internal transition often collides with external pressure. Society rarely talks about this phase with honesty. Instead, it reinforces the idea that by 30, you should have everything figured out. When your internal experience does not match this narrative, self-judgment arises. You start to question your competence, your choices, and even your worth. But this judgment is based on an outdated expectation, not on truth. Health studies show that prolonged identity conflict increases stress responses in the body. When who you feel you are no longer aligns with how you live, the nervous system remains in a low-grade state of tension. This can manifest as chronic fatigue, digestive issues, anxiety, or a sense of emotional flatness. The body is signaling that it cannot thrive in a life that feels internally divided. Buddha offered a radically compassionate insight here. He taught that there is no fixed self to protect or perfect. What we call identity is a collection of habits, memories, and perceptions, constantly changing. When you begin to see this directly, the fear of being lost starts to soften. You realize that what is dissolving is not your essence, but the stories you once used to define it. This does not mean you abandon responsibility or purpose. It means your sense of purpose begins to shift from proving yourself to understanding yourself. Instead of asking, "How do I succeed?" the deeper question becomes, "How do I live in alignment with what feels true?" This question is quieter, slower, and more difficult to answer, which is why it often feels uncomfortable at first. Psychology describes this stage as a meaning-seeking phase. Motivation no longer comes from external reward alone, but from internal coherence. Actions feel fulfilling only when they resonate with your values. When they do not, even success feels hollow. This is why many people after 30 feel unmotivated in environments that once energized them. Their nervous system is no longer satisfied by stimulation without meaning. The feeling of being lost, then, is not a sign that you have failed to become someone. It is a sign that you are being invited to become more fully yourself. The old identity is loosening because it has completed its task. It carried you this far. Now it is making space for something deeper, more authentic, and more stable. Buddha described this phase as a turning point on the path. When external certainty fades, inner awareness has the chance to emerge. This awareness does not rush. It does not demand immediate answers. It asks for patience, honesty, and gentle attention. The discomfort you feel is not an enemy. It is the threshold of transformation. As you stand in this in-between space, it may feel like you are losing direction, but in truth, you are shedding illusions. You are learning to listen not to who you were told to be, but to who you are becoming. This process is slow, often confusing, and deeply human, and it is exactly where real clarity begins to form. In the next part of this journey, we will explore how this inner shift affects your mental health, emotional balance, and physical well-being, and how Buddha's teachings and modern science together offer a way through this uncertainty toward genuine peace. As the inner sense of identity shifts after 30, the body often reacts before the mind fully understands what is happening. Many people try to reason their way through feeling lost, searching for logical explanations or external fixes, yet the unease remains. This is because the body does not operate on explanations. It operates on alignment. When life no longer matches inner truth, the nervous system begins to speak in sensations rather than thoughts. Modern health science confirms that emotional conflict is not only psychological, it is physiological. The body stores unresolved stress in the muscles, the breath, the gut, and the immune system. When you continue living in ways that no longer feel meaningful, the body enters a state of low-grade survival. Cortisol remains elevated, sleep becomes shallow, and the parasympathetic nervous system struggles to fully activate. Over time, this creates exhaustion that rest alone cannot fix. After 30, many people notice changes in their energy levels. Motivation feels heavier, recovery takes longer. The excitement that once pushed you through long days no longer carries the same force. This is not simply aging. It is the body signaling that it can no longer run purely on ambition. It needs coherence between action and inner values. Without that coherence, even healthy habits lose their effectiveness. Buddha taught that the body and mind are not separate. He observed that mental suffering inevitably expresses itself through physical discomfort. When the mind is caught in craving, resistance, or confusion, the body tightens. When the mind is at peace, the body softens. This understanding aligns closely with modern neuroscience, which shows that emotional regulation directly affects heart rate variability, inflammation levels, and overall resilience. Feeling lost after 30 often coincides with subtle health symptoms that are difficult to diagnose. You may experience tension without a clear cause, digestive issues without a clear trigger, or a constant feeling of being on edge, even during quiet moments. These are not random. They are messages from a system that is asking to be listened to rather than pushed. Psychology describes this as a loss of internal safety. When your actions no longer feel connected to your values, the brain perceives uncertainty. Even if life appears stable, the nervous system senses misalignment and responds with vigilance. This is why many people feel anxious without knowing why. The anxiety is not about a specific threat. It is about living in a way that no longer feels true. Buddha's path offered a radical solution to this inner conflict. Instead of trying to control life or force clarity, he taught the practice of awareness. Awareness means learning to observe experience without immediately trying to change it. When you begin to notice your thoughts, emotions, and bodily sensations with curiosity rather than judgment, something remarkable happens. The nervous system begins to relax. Safety slowly returns. Neuroscience supports this. Studies on mindfulness show that gentle, non-reactive awareness reduces activity in the amygdala, the brain's threat center, while strengthening the prefrontal cortex, which governs clarity and emotional regulation. This shift allows the body to exit survival mode and enter a state of healing. Over time, stress hormones decrease, immune function improves, and emotional resilience grows. The feeling of being lost often softens when you stop demanding immediate answers. Clarity does not arrive through force, it emerges through presence. When you allow yourself to fully feel where you are without labeling it as failure, the nervous system begins to trust again. This trust creates the internal space needed for new insight to arise. Buddha taught that suffering intensifies when we resist what is already here. When you fight the feeling of being lost, you add a second layer of pain. But when you gently acknowledge it, without shame or urgency, the experience begins to change. The feeling no longer defines you. It becomes information rather than identity. This is where modern psychology and ancient wisdom meet. Both recognize that healing does not begin with fixing, but with understanding. The moment you stop asking, "What is wrong with me?" and begin asking, "What is my experience trying to teach me?" the entire process shifts. You move from self-judgment to self-relationship. As the body starts to feel safer, intuition becomes clearer. You may notice subtle preferences, quiet longings, or a renewed sensitivity to what drains you and what nourishes you. These signals were always present, but they were overshadowed by urgency and expectation. After 30, when the noise fades, these quieter signals finally become audible. Feeling lost, then, is not a sign that you have lost yourself. It is a sign that you are reconnecting with parts of yourself that were ignored in the rush to become someone. The body is guiding you back to balance, asking for attention rather than answers. When you listen, gently and consistently, a deeper sense of direction begins to form. In the final part of this journey, we will explore how to move forward from this space with wisdom rather than fear, and how Buddha's teachings, combined with modern psychological insight, offer a path toward clarity, peace, and a healthier, more meaningful life. There comes a moment in this journey when the feeling of being lost begins to change its texture. It does not disappear suddenly, and it does not transform into instant clarity. Instead, it softens. It becomes less threatening and more informative. You start to sense that this phase was never meant to give you immediate answers, but to slow you down enough to hear a deeper voice within you. This is where direction begins to emerge, not as a rigid plan, but as an inner orientation. Buddha taught that true peace does not come from arranging life perfectly, but from relating to life wisely. After 30, many people realize that control is an illusion they have been unconsciously holding on to. They believed that if they planned well enough, worked hard enough, and made the right choices, life would eventually settle into certainty. When that certainty fails to arrive, disappointment follows. Wisdom begins when you stop demanding certainty and start cultivating presence. Modern psychology supports this shift. Research on well-being shows that psychological flexibility, the ability to adapt to change while staying connected to core values, is one of the strongest predictors of long-term mental health. People who learn to respond to life rather than force it report lower stress, better emotional regulation, and a deeper sense of meaning. This flexibility does not mean drifting aimlessly. It means allowing direction to evolve organically. After 30, purpose is no longer something you chase aggressively. It becomes something you align with gently. You begin to notice that peace increases when your actions match your values, even if those actions look small or unconventional from the outside. This alignment creates a quiet confidence that does not depend on external validation. It feels stable because it is rooted internally. Buddha described this as the middle way, a path that avoids extremes of self-indulgence and self-denial. In modern terms, it means living neither on autopilot nor in constant self-criticism. It means engaging with life fully while remaining aware of your inner state. When you live this way, the feeling of being lost gradually transforms into a sense of openness rather than confusion. Health science reveals that this inner alignment has powerful effects on the body. When the nervous system feels safe and coherent, inflammation decreases, hormonal balance improves, and sleep deepens. The body thrives when it is no longer pushed by fear or driven solely by obligation. As inner pressure decreases, energy returns in a more sustainable form. You no longer rely on adrenaline to function. You begin to operate from clarity. Direction in this phase of life does not come as a single dramatic decision. It unfolds through awareness. You start paying attention to how different choices affect your inner state. You notice what expands you and what contracts you. Over time, these observations guide your actions naturally. This is not passive. It is deeply intentional, but it is guided by wisdom rather than urgency. Buddha taught that when the mind is no longer dominated by craving and aversion, insight arises naturally. This insight is not intellectual, it is experiential. You begin to understand what truly matters to you, not because someone told you, but because you feel it directly. This understanding becomes your compass. Even when life remains uncertain, you no longer feel lost within it. Modern neuroscience describes this state as integration. Different parts of the brain begin to communicate more effectively. Emotional awareness, rational thinking, and bodily intuition work together rather than competing. This integration creates a sense of wholeness that is deeply calming. You feel grounded even when you do not have all the answers. As this integration deepens, your relationship with time changes. You stop measuring your worth by milestones and deadlines. You begin to see life as a process rather than a race. This perspective reduces anxiety and increases patience, both with yourself and with others. Compassion grows naturally when you realize that everyone is navigating their own invisible transitions. Feeling lost after 30 was never a mistake in your life story. It was a necessary chapter. It marked the end of living unconsciously and the beginning of living with awareness. What felt like disorientation was actually a recalibration. Your mind, body, and values were learning to align in a deeper, more honest way. Buddha's teachings remind us that awakening is not about escaping life, but about seeing it clearly. When you stop running from uncertainty and start meeting it with presence, life begins to reveal its deeper patterns. You may still face challenges, but they no longer define you. You meet them with steadiness rather than fear. As this journey continues, clarity will come and go, but inner stability can remain. You will learn to trust yourself, not because you have everything figured out, but because you are willing to listen. This trust is the foundation of a meaningful life, one that honors both your humanity and your wisdom. If this message resonated with you, if you felt seen or understood even in a small way, know that you are not alone on this path. This channel exists to offer guidance, reflection, and healing for those navigating the deeper questions of life. Subscribe to Divine and Spiritual 0369 for more transformative wisdom, spiritual insight, and gentle guidance toward inner peace, clarity, and better health.